not much for microphones, but I'm going to leave it right there. I'd like to first thank Sister Scott for inviting me and Mission One for having me. It's always an honor to get to speak.
Amen.
Especially in your own church. Right? So I appreciate this opportunity very much. The scriptures that I was given are coming out of Jeremiah. It's chapter 18, verses 4 through 6, and I'm going to read those from the New King James Version. And then I also have Lamentations, chapter 4, verse 2. And the vessel that he made of clay was marred in the hand of the potter, so he made it again into another vessel, as it seemed good to the potter to make. Then the word of the Lord came to me, saying, O house of Israel, can I not do with you as this potter, says the Lord. Yes, look, as this clay is the potter in the potter's hand, so are you in my hand, O house of Israel. And Lamentation says, see how the precious children of Jerusalem, worth their weight in fine gold, are now treated like pots of clay made by a common potter. Basically, this is good because this is a message of hope for all of us.
Yes.
All right.
And it's telling us that we are actually. I know nobody in here is probably a stranger to the potter's house, and what that analogy is referring to. It's comparing us, right, as clay vessels, like a potter does, being molded by the potter. And so that is what God, thank God, is doing for us, right? He's working with us. And this particular piece of the potter's house is actually talking about when we're kind of messed up, right? And it comes at a really interesting time for me in my life. My husband and I have kind of had a rebirth, so to speak, at our house since January. We kind of got to a point where we were done being porters, basically. Our house was a mess, and we needed to get it all together and get organized. And it was the weekend that we kind of decided to start doing that. Where we started was with our garage, because it was a disaster. And there was so much stuff in there that there was no way to start. And I remember standing there with him as we opened the garage door, and we got childcare for our kids that day because we knew they could not be helpful in that particular sense. So we opened up the garage, and I just remember feeling kind of hopeless because I was like, there's too much. Yeah. There's too much stuff in there. I don't know what we're gonna do with that. And what we ended up doing is we started pulling it all out into the front yard and into the driveway, which was a little embarrassing, I have to say, because as we pulled it out, it was shocking to me how much stuff we actually had in that garage, how much we had accumulated. In 12 years of marriage, we had gathered some stuff, right? And even just our oldest is 5.5, and just the amount of kids stuff we had accumulated, from birthdays and Christmas, it was astonishing how much, and almost, it was pretty shameful. And I told him at one point we were going through all of it. We'd been hours and hours, and it took us an entire 48 hours. We worked pretty much from the sun up till way past sundown into almost the next morning each night, getting it all, trying to put it back together. And at one point I told him, I said, we should be ashamed because look at everything that we have accumulated here. God has blessed us. He has blessed us with the ability to accumulate this much stuff. People who have blessed us, things that we have bought. We have a beautiful house that God made possible for us to have, and we complain about the fact that we don't have any money. That we don't have enough of whatever it is we feel like we need. And I was like, why he hasn't given us anything is because we're not good stewards over what he's already given us. And so we had to, it was kind of a hard realization to come to, but I've had to kind of have a come to Jesus meeting with myself. And I know my husband kind of felt the same way. It's like, he can't bless us because we have too many stumbling blocks. We heard about stumbling blocks this morning in our service. And we had a lot of stumbling blocks, and we still do. They're not gone. But our house was, we've basically done, it's like one of those shows, right? It looks like a makeover has happened, and it looks like a different house. And we walked through it, and I'm like, I can't believe how big our house is. And it was hard to feel that because of so many stumbling blocks that we had going on. And what had happened is over those years, as it was getting to kind of pile up on us, you do start to feel hopeless because you're like, I don't know where to start. It's too much. It's too many things. And there's a lot of other stuff happening in your life too. I I've dealt with pain for many, many years, and as of last Christmas, I had a hysterectomy, and it took that pain away. And I was then able to kind of get my life back. But, pain was a huge deal for me. And it's hard to make yourself do anything if you are in pain, right? And I had it for about 10 years, and so it was getting to me. But there's a lot of stuff going on, and that's kind of how we are, right? With God, that's how God sees us. He is all the time shaping us and molding us, trying to make us into what He would have us to be. In Sunday school this morning, we talked about God's promise, God's purpose, God's plan for you. Yeah. And this really kind of goes with this, right? Because one of the things that when I was teaching Sunday school this morning, we had talked about you're born with promise. From the very, very, very instant second that you're conceived, you have promise, right? God has a plan for you, and that plan comes from your promise. And there's a lot of things that'll happen during your life. You'll have different purposes and different plans throughout life. And we had talked this morning about some of those you'll achieve in your time, and some of them you won't. And they're going to be passed down through your children, and that's how it's going to be realized, right? But God's all the time, He's shaping us, right? And it's, pottery, when you think about what that is, it's kind of hard for us to think about it now, because it's that was something common in Jeremiah's time for him to see, right? Yes. He would see potters all the time. That's what they had, right? Yes. Our stuff, we go buy it at, wherever you buy your stuff, Walmart, Macy's, where, whichever level you're on, right? I'm more of a Walmart kind of gal. But there's just stuff just shows up there. So we don't really think about how it gets there, but there's a lot of work that goes into that, right? And when you buy, one of my grandmothers, or both of my grandmothers have, one of them has recently passed, and I have inherited a lot of her china. And I didn't ever have my own china, but I was kind of looking at that this weekend when I was able to take it out to use as serving stuff for a party that we had for Jason. I kind of was thinking about this pottery, right? That there's a set. The pottery comes in a set. You buy a china set, and there's plates and bowls, and everything kind of works together, right? And it would be kind of weird just to have one piece of something. You need all of them, because it's what makes it heal. And that's kind of what God's doing. He's shaping all of us, even our families, right? He's not only you're this own vessel that He's shaping and working with, but He's also shaping and working your family. And what you are doing, how you are, what your place in the set of china or the pottery set is important, because without it, you're not a complete set. Right. So, and even in our church families, we all are individual vessels, but we're all very important to the set. We need to be there together. And part of but as we're getting shaped, right, there's going to be things that happen that are not, they're not right. I don't know if any of you are bakers, or I like to bake. I love to cook and bake and all those types of things. And one of the great things that I just started to learn about how to use fondant. I don't know if you know what that is. It's kind of like Play-Doh, but it's made out of sugar. And it's the kind of stuff that makes those really pretty cakes they're perfect, picture perfect cakes. But one of the great things about fondant is it's like Play-Doh. So as you were rolling it out, I was making him a cake yesterday, and we were cutting out 40s, because he just turned 40 here. He's turning 40 this week. And so I was cutting out 40s to put on his cake, and as we were rolling it out, it would mess up. And there would be like a little imperfection, or there'd be too much powdered sugar on this piece, and that looked ugly. I didn't like that, right? And so, but what was great is I could just scrap it all together and start back over. And I could just roll it back out again, and then do it again. And if it got messed up again, I scrapped it. And I'm kind of a perfectionist, so I scrapped it a lot, right? And God's a perfectionist too. So He doesn't really mind scrapping us a lot, right? He doesn't mind remolding us and taking us and fixing us as we go along, because we're going to, because He's given us free will, which thank God He has, and we have the ability to make choices in our life, even though we have a plan and we have promise, and hopefully we're all praying and talking to God, and we think we know what He wants us to do. We're still going to make the wrong choice, right? But the great part is we can get back on track, and we kind of talked about that in Sunday school too, which is at 9:45 on Sunday mornings if you're interested. Sorry, little plug. But if you get off track, or if you get tarnished, or whatever it is, it doesn't mean you're any less valuable, right? A piece of silver that you inherit from your grandmother, like I have, and it has sat in her drawer for I don't know how many years, is tarnished. And when you take it out, it does not look pretty, right? It looks black and it looks all messed up. It's not the way it's supposed to be. But you can polish it up, and then it's just as valuable and beautiful as it once was.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what God sees in us. Even though we might become tarnished, or we might have these little imperfections, or we might do things that are off the track of what we were supposed to be doing, He gives us the opportunity and the encouragement to carry on, to do it again, because He'll let us start over. That's what Jesus was all about, right? He washed away all of our sins, so we can start over. Yeah. And it's not just a one-time deal. You know, you get many, many chances. I mean, we get more chances than we even give our kids, right? Yeah. We're kind of on, with our children, it's like you get 2 shots, and on the 3rd, you're out of here, right? That's kind of how it is at our house. We get 2 strikes, and then, you know, I'm going to say it 2 times. That's all you get from me, and then things are going to happen, right? And so but God doesn't even do that to us. He continually allows us to have these chances, and He will start over with us again. And I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to do any kind of pottery, but it's if you ever get the opportunity, it's fun. And if you like to be kind of messy, which it's a fun kind of thing to do, because clay is very malleable, and if you've played with Play-Doh, right, it's the same kind of idea but with the potter's wheel, when you're the potter is actually controlling the speed of the wheel. He's controlling the speed of the wheel. He's controlling the pressure that's being used, because pressure is what makes things happen to the vessel, right? The pressure is what makes things change. So you need the pressure. So even though it hurts us, right? And sometimes, and if clay could feel something, it would feel pain or pressure or be uncomfortable. And God's going to do that to us as well, because we're not going to, everything really, if you think about anything in life that's really truly beautiful, it does not come by chance. It's not easily made here. Think about diamonds. Diamonds are gorgeous, right? They're beautiful. They're our best friends, right? So diamonds are this beautiful thing, but they have to be created under a lot of pressure and heat, and they come from a very volatile environment to be so beautiful. Even a volcano, if you watch when it erupts, it's a beautiful thing to watch that lava, and it's beautiful to see. It's one of the things that makes you know that there is a God, because it's so miraculous. Same with childbirth, right? The most beautiful thing that you can get as a child. But it's a painful process, and it's painful, and it's long, right? It's not quickly done. It takes time. Same with making a pot, right? God has to kind of put us under pressure. He's got to put us in situations so that we can, in the end, be a beautiful product. Or if not, it would just, He could just leave us alone. Right? He could put no pressure to us. He could not put us on a wheel that's spinning around and making us dizzy, right? He could leave us alone, but then what would we be? We would then continue to be a block of clay. We would not actually then be useful, right? Because that's what the whole point of pottery is for it to be a useful vessel. And that's what we want to be. We want to be useful vessels. We want to, that when we are called home, we want to stand before God and for Him to say, well done, right? And He's not going to say that for a lump of clay that did nothing, because what would you say well done to? You have to, the song that we just sang at the very, very beginning had a line in it that was because he first loved me. And an artist truly loves that block of clay before it's anything. And if you're any kind of artisan at all, whether it's baking or cooking or whatever it may be, scrapbooking, I really do love to bake, and I love the stuff before we even do it, right? I like looking up the recipes. I like gathering like shopping for the stuff. I like going to the cake shop. I like looking at all the different stuff that they have. I like the process. I don't just like the cupcake. I like the cupcake. Don't get me wrong. But I like the process of getting to the cupcake, right? Like going through all of it. The cake that I made Jason was a labor of love, right? It was I didn't use a box. It was scratch made. It was, it was hard. It took hours to do, and it was a long process, and it could have been easier. I could have done that easier. I could have ordered it. People make beautiful cakes, and not at a super expensive price. And I probably spent more going to the cake store than I would have if I had just ordered a cake. But the fact is I wanted to do it because I love it. because I love him. And so it's a showing of our love, and that's what God's doing for us when he's putting us on that potter's wheel. When he's molding us and shaping us and putting us under pressure and putting us in the fire and all of those things that are going to happen in life. It's because he loves us. So maybe when we have struggles and when we do feel that pressure of things weighing us down, maybe instead of thinking of it as a punishment, that God's not with me, we should remember that that's actually God helping you. Right? He's putting you under that pressure. He's making you feel it so that you can become a better you. Because truly, if you think about anything that's really happened in life, the things that you cherish the most in your life, they're probably the things that you had to work the hardest for. You know, and those are the things that mean the most to you because you really had to struggle for them. And that's the things you're like, I'm going to protect that to my dying day because that's what I worked for. I think I've mentioned before that, I mean, when my college education I haven't gotten to use my college education per se, but it's one of my most valued things because I worked so hard for it. I paid for every hour I paid for it. I'm still paying for it with student loans, right? But it's something very valuable. And when I was taking those classes, I didn't drop classes. I didn't check out on somebody because I paid for that. I was going to get my money's worth. Whether you're a good teacher or a bad teacher, I'm going to learn something because I paid for that, right? So there's, it's like when you're a kid and you start getting some of your own money, your own allowance money. I remember my mother, we'd go into Walmart and I'd be like, I want this baby doll or I want this whatever. And she's like, well, you have money. I didn't want to spend my money, right? I was like, well, I don't want it anymore. She's like, so you'll spend my money on it, but not yours. And so you kind of learn that there's, it's one of the lessons in life where you learn what's really truly valuable to you. And what's so awesome with this is that God thinks that we are so valuable. We are so valuable to Him that He's willing to spend the time because this isn't something that's fast. Making a pot out of clay is not fast. That's not done quickly. And when it's done well, right? And he is a perfectionist, so he wants it done well. So if we come in there, if we're coming to him as this lump of clay, and he starts working us and dealing with us and putting us under pressure, and then, as he's putting that pressure, we might cave in, and that happens when you're potting. You might be using the clay, and you push just a little too hard, and it caves in, and then you are back to a lump of clay. But that's awesome that we have the opportunity to go back to be that lump of clay, because that means he's never going to give up on us. He is always going to continually keep shaping us. Even if we go back to lump of clay again and again, he's not going to put us out like we might put each other out, right? If we had to keep starting over with somebody, we might be like, you know what, I'm done with you. I'm done with you. But God will never say that to us. He will never say, I'm done with you. As long as you're willing to get back up on that wheel and do what and just follow what his hands are doing for you. Even when it's pressure, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's not maybe what you want to be doing, keep doing it. Keep letting him put that pressure. And remember that the pressure, that's God basically having his hand on you. So instead of it feeling so oppressive, we should really try to think of it as more like the pressure you feel from a hug. Right? That feels good. That kind of pressure feels good. Even sometimes when it's one of those hugs, like my grandfather used to hug you so hard, it actually would hurt you. But it was, I would give anything for one of those hugs right now because it meant how much he loved me. He loved me so much that he just couldn't even hug you hard enough, right? And that's what God's truly doing. He's putting us under so much pressure because he loves us so much. And he wants us to be the best version of ourselves that we can be.
He does.
So I think that's a challenge for all of us to kind of reframe how we're looking at that pressure and those pains that we feel in life. And think about them as not pressures and pain, but this is a really, really tight hug from God. And he's doing it because he loves us and wants to shape us and going to give us a chance again and again and again. And thank God that he does. Thank you.